Hello, everyone. Welcome to the quarterly NDSA Infrastructure Interest Group. Thanks for joining us at an earlier hour this time. Looks like everyone's signing on, and I posted a link there for the agenda. If you could add your name to the attendance list, and also if this is the first time you're joining us, if you want to, feel free to add your name under the new attendees list. That'd be great. All right. So normally we ask folks who are just joining us to give a quick introduction. Looks like we have about 8 or 9 folks who are joining us for the first time. If you would like to, please feel free to hop on the video and say hello. But if you don't want to do that, that's absolutely fine as well.
I guess I can go. My name is Marie-Chris Scott-Labayan. I'm a digital preservation librarian at the UW, just started recently. And it's the first time I've really had to focus on just digital preservation. So it's really exciting to kind of see what people are doing. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for joining. Hi, Diane. Thanks for joining us. Just saw your message in the chat. Okay, well, Robin, if it sounds good to you, let's go ahead and get started.
I think so.
Great. Okay, so for our quarterly meeting, the first meeting of the year, we have Dr. Lise Jaillant from Loughborough University and Glen Layne-Worthey from University of Illinois. They're joining us. Say hello. And they are here they agreed to present to us about the AEOLIAN Network project, which was an ongoing project designed to assess how AI can help with the access to born digital and digitized assets, and as we announced in the email. So welcome to you both. We really appreciate you being here, and thanks for chatting about the AEOLIAN Network project. Let me go ahead and grab a linked out. I think, Lise, you had already...
Yes, so I just shared the link to our listserv. So if you want to receive updates about the project, feel free to join. Do you want me to start, Erica? Yeah, so shall I start the presentation? Yes.
Yeah.
So we just have a few slides to present the AEOLIAN project. So hopefully you can see that on your side. If not, just let me know. Okay, so I'm Lise Jaillant. I'm a reader and associate professor in digital humanities at Loughborough University in the UK. And I'm delighted to be here with Glen Layne-Worthey today. So Glen is the US PI on the AEOLIAN project. I'm the UK PI. Glen has a background in libraries. He's currently an associate director for research support services at the University of Illinois. So the project started in 2021. We just finished it in December, but we still have publications coming up. So it's still very active. So again, feel free to join our listserv for updates. So the project was funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council in the UK, the National Endowment for the Humanities in the US. So it was a very transatlantic project. And we worked with a series of partners. So in the UK, we worked with Durham University, where the COI Claire Warwick is based. Claire is a professor in digital humanities. We worked with the University of Glasgow. Another COI, Paul Gooding, is based there, and his background is in information studies. And finally, we worked with Dublin City University, where Annalena Caputo, our international COI, is based. Annalena has a background in computer sciences. So as you can see, we had a very interdisciplinary team, and I think it has been great really to work across disciplines, across sectors, to try to solve this issue of access to born digital records, and to digitize records as well, because as you know, access can be a very, very big problem for us, you know, for many reasons, for copyright, data protection, many other reasons as well. Also, we worked with partners in the US, Auburn University, the Frick Collection, Stanford University contributed to the project. So of course, we are very grateful to all of them. So as I said, we delivered various things, the workshops, the publications as well. So we organized 6 online workshops. So remember, the project started in 2021. So we were very much in the midst of the COVID situation. So we were very glad to have those online workshops and not to have promised face-to-face workshops to the funders. So the last workshop, the 6th workshop, was organized by Glasgow University last year in March. And by the way, you can still access the recordings. We have the slides as well on our workshops, on our website. So have a look at the website if you're interested. Also, in terms of publications, we published 2 special issues in journals. So Journal on Computing and Cultural Heritage. So this special issue was published in December last year. Again, you can find the list of articles on our website in the Outcomes section. So I'm in charge of this special issue. Glen has been in charge of the other special issue in Journal of Documentation. This one is nearly finished. We have a series of articles already on the website, and I believe Glen will say a few words about this special issue. But anyway, it's nearly there, and you can find a few articles already on the website. Also, we have a series of case studies, and these case studies are going to be incorporated in our edited collection, which is going to be published open access by UCL Press, so University College London. And this one is nearly finished. We are going to submit the manuscript to the publisher next month. So it should be published at the end of the year. Again, keep an eye on our announcements. And if you want to sign up for the listserv, that would be great. Glen, would you like to jump in here?
Sure. Thank you very much, Lise. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. A couple of things I wanted to point out about what Lise has said about the general project. It was not only transatlantic, but it was very specifically transdisciplinary. One of the requirements, there were 2 unique requirements of the funders. One is that there had to be a UK PI, and the other that had to be a US PI, and the projects were adjudicated separately, but given an award together by the 2 funding agencies. And also it was required that one of the primary funders be an academic researcher and the other be a cultural heritage institution. And we found that it was always funny to, I mean, for me anyway, it was funny to think about that as a dichotomy, because there's, of course, fuzzy boundaries, and most of us work in organizations that we think of as both academic and cultural, but there was that requirement. The UK PI Lise is very much a tenure track faculty person, and I'm very much a library person. I happen to be working in the HathiTrust Research Center. As some of you know, Michelle Palulo on the call is a member of our advisory board, and which is a great thing. So you who work in the library space know that libraries are always in that in-between space. But interdisciplinarity of the AEOLIAN project and all of our research outcomes, the case studies, the special journal issues, the workshops, all of them had just a kind of dizzying array of people from libraries, from departments of information studies, from digital humanities departments, plenty of archival people, plenty of history museum people, art museum people. It was really a kind of heartwarming and not too surprising, but interesting mix of people. So for the next couple of minutes, I'll tell you about the case studies. As Lise showed you before, we had 5 different case studies that were funded through the project. I'll talk most about the one that I was in charge of. That is the University of Illinois case study, which was mostly centered in the HathiTrust Research Center, which, as you may know, is based jointly at the University of Illinois and at the University of Indiana. Our case study was actually a set of miniature case studies, and I won't go into a great deal about them, but here are the basic topics. They run the gamut from what I think of as just general HathiTrust Research Center work. I hope you all know about that, but if you don't, I'm happy to answer questions. This first little box, AI-enabled approaches to research within copyright materials. I think that's a real specialty of HathiTrust. And we use artificial intelligence methods to achieve that. We create data sets of derived data that make use of natural language processing, which is an AI or machine learning technology. And in fact, we make use of OCR, which sounds like old school pre-AI technology, but it's not. It also relies on machine learning and increasingly is being improved by machine learning and AI. So I should mention that in addition to the disciplinary variety, there's also a variety of what people think of as AI and machine learning. I and many of the people who collaborated with us chose to take a very, very broad view of it. So people may quibble that OCRs is not an AI technology, that it's old school, but I still think it's an important one. So our case study does deal with the advantages of artificial intelligence and machine learning in providing research access to in-copyright materials through derived data. We also have had presented in the case study a project of automatic detection of front matter. The purpose of this was to be able to, in the massive HathiTrust digital library, to open up front matter pages that are not subject to copyright because they're essentially metadata. At the moment, if a work in the HathiTrust digital library is in copyright or a questionable copyright, it's completely closed to outside users, but there's a desire to open up the front matter portions. And also the realization that we can't really identify those manually for 18 million volumes. And so we've developed in the Research Center some AI-enabled, AI-enhanced methods to automatically determine how many of whether it's the first 10 pages or first 5 or first 20 pages of a work are likely to be front matter and thus likely to be openable. We also, surprisingly to some, have by necessity used AI methods to identify fiction in the digital library. Not everyone knows, unless you're a cataloger from way back, that fiction wasn't necessarily identified in cataloging. So we have several scholars who've been interested in studying just the fictional portions of the HathiTrust digital library, but how to find that subset of the library that's fiction has required machine learning approaches. Likewise, we've done work to detect duplicates and other work relationships, that is translations or editions. This is also something that catalog records in their ideal state can do. You can have a uniform title that will unite different translations or editions of a single work, but those are also, that sort of access requires very, very high level cataloging, which the digital library doesn't have at the moment. So we've used, we've had scholar partners who've done this sort of detection. And something that has been somewhat outside the purview of the HathiTrust Research Center, but has been undertaken by some of our Illinois colleagues, is doing AI-enhanced page layout analysis, in particular of scientific research. We have a frequent collaborator partner here at the university in the iSchool who is an astronomer, and she studies digitized astronomy journals. And of course, images are very important in all science, but in particular in astronomy. So her work identifies non-textual objects on a page, associates them with textual elements such as captions, and unites them in a new data set. And then the last thing that our case study highlighted was the visualization of massive data in the browser. So this is taking 4 terabytes of data and reducing it down through various very clever AI mechanisms, such that all of those data points can be viewed in a browser with a very low bandwidth. It's really a fascinating piece of work. Let's go to the next slide, please, Lise. So that Illinois case study of case studies was accompanied by 4 others, all of which are really great. I won't go into great detail about them, except to point out once again the great variety that they've undertaken, the variety of institutions that they represent, and the variety of approaches. The National Archives case study focused on topic modeling as a way to approach a massive corpus and to present it to a user and to provide additional means of searching. But also it focused, as many will, on matters that are non-technical, such as risk, uncertainty, trust, and the ethics of using AI. How can we convince people to trust the materials that we're presenting to them if they aren't human curated? How can we ourselves be certain of the accuracy of their cataloging, or the accuracy of the topic models that are being developed, et cetera, et cetera. This case study also focused on explainable AI, which is, as you all know, is a really important topic. The Stanford case study focused on computer vision, and I think very cleverly they focused on an older project that was, I think the dates are 2014 to 2017, so a project that's long finished, certainly not representing the most advanced technology in computer vision, but they chose to focus on not so much on the technology, but on the relationship of professionals and readers to the technologies. That is, how did the AI approaches that were used then reveal biases in traditional cataloging, and how did it introduce its own, how did these approaches introduce their own biases? Also very fascinating, very ethically focused case study. The Durham case study focused on mapping. It talked about the national libraries of England, Ireland, and Wales, specifically focusing on maps and AI methods to extract information from them that is searchable. Maps are curious objects in that they're highly visual, but they have a wealth of data and metadata embedded in those visual things that traditionally have been really hard to extract for purposes of search and research. And then finally, the National Library of Scotland focused on handwritten text recognition. This is, they focused on this as a way to enhance the discoverability and to enhance computational analysis of their massive collections. So as you can hear, a really broad range of case studies. As Lise mentioned, some of the case studies are available on our AEOLIAN website. Most of them will be are withheld from the website in honor of the publication that they'll see very soon, before the end of the year. So since that'll be an open access work, I hope you, I look forward to seeing it come out, and I hope you all will look for it as well. I think that's it for the case study. So Lise, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Glen. Okay, so the big challenge we have at the moment is that people in the cultural heritage sector are often very isolated when they work on AI. There's not a lot of forums, to share this kind of work at the moment. So that's really the feedback that we had after our workshops. People were saying, okay, that has been very helpful because, now I have a chance to meet people who do similar kind of work. So not only in the US, not only in the UK, but also in other countries as well. As Glen mentioned, we had people from continental Europe who shared their work, people elsewhere as well. So that's really the big thing that we achieved as part of the AEOLIAN project, I think, offering a forum for people. So you wanted to share this other challenge, Glen?
Sure. I think that all of the people that participated in the workshops or contributed to the case studies expressed um, uh, some frustration with a lack of skills and a lack of funding. So all of us in the cultural heritage sector, of course, never have enough money, enough funds to do everything that we want. But AI things can be especially expensive. And I think the expense, is safe to say, is largely in two forms. One is the computing resources that are required, and another is in the skills that are required, and funding to hire people who have those skills. I worked for most of my career at Stanford, and we were forever competing with Silicon Valley developers. And now that, especially now that work is largely remote, we are facing the same competition in Illinois. We just can't hire or retain people with the skills that are needed for, especially for creating new AI enhanced approaches. At the same time, I think it's safe to say that all of us, or almost all of us, are faced with very unrealistic expectations and with a kind of overheated hype cycle. Most of the AI work came before ChatGPT came along, and that I think it's also safe to say that ChatGPT has only turned up the heat on the hype cycle and the unrealistic expectations. It's been a lesson to me to see how many of the case studies are really dealing with with problems of quality control and very sort of I don't want to say mundane, but sort of everyday challenges of using AI to create reliable and believable things, and the expectation of administrators that AI will decrease the expense of human labor, and the machines will do all the work for us, and the high-paid humans will go on to do something else or find other jobs, which I think it's safe to say that nobody in our entire network ever said that they've met and exceeded expectations. There are always funny discoveries along the way of expectations not being met, and expectations created by the popularity of the approaches. Let's see if there's anything
fantastic.
else I wanted.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
back
So
to you.
let's move on to the discussion, perhaps, if that's okay. So we have 3 questions that we would like to ask you. So I think because we have a relatively small group, I think we have 35 people. It's probably okay if we keep the entire group and not break the group in smaller groups. So really, the first question we would like to ask you is, what are the particular challenges that people face when they work with AI in the cultural heritage sector? And this is really a broad question. It's about the entire sector. So of course, most of you work in this sector, and you probably have opinions about this. So feel free to jump in, perhaps put on your camera if you haven't done so already, or use the chat, whatever works for you, really. And perhaps, Glen, you can start, because you work in the cultural heritage, so you might want to start the conversation here.
Sure, I'd be happy to. One particular challenge we in the HathiTrust Research Center have is that we have plenty of people who would like to do more with AI, including some of our very forward-thinking graduate students, but we are restricted by licensing agreements, oddly enough, even though we have data from the Google book scanning project in massive amounts. All of the library partners who signed agreements with Google signed kind of non-compete clauses that we wouldn't build something that would compete with what Google wants to do with its corpus, and constructing a large language model based on that, for example, is a very controversial decision. And so far, we have not. I don't want to say. Well, I'll put it crudely. We haven't been allowed by the HathiTrust administration, because they have rightly seen that the agreements don't allow us to go ahead and create this large language model, which is the latest thing in AI. So legal and contractual arrangements, even though we have great access to a great amount of data, still impede us.
Great, thank you so much, Glen. Anybody else who wants to share their ideas about this? Okay.
I see that Martha in the chat has echoed my take. Yeah.
Yeah, I just opened the chat. So yeah, so if people want to use the chat, that's fine.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is that idea that we have conversations about AI and we all bring ourselves and our levels of understanding, right, to the conversation. And usually we're talking about different topics or portions of AI, which for me, that's the challenging part.
Great, thank you.
One of the things that's come up campus-wide is talking about the unknown cost of AI. When you run it across a body, you know, people have run into unexpected expenses, especially if running on Amazon.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we have a comment from Kim in the chat. In academic libraries, the expectations that we add support for AI tools if we explore them without added staff or time. So the issue of having enough staff, enough time to do this kind of work is, of course, a very big issue. Thank you so much, Kim, for this. And yes, that's exactly the same thing in the UK as well. Caleb has another comment saying, as a fairly recent grad student from library studies, I can say that library and archives programs have not quite caught up to the tech that library and archives professionals are using. So this is a common conversation that I have with other peers who are new professionals. So perhaps coming back to the issue of skills here, very important problem as well. Thank you so much, Caleb.
You know, I just looked at on the AWS front. You know, we, for the purposes of you know, scanning content. So our team runs a preservation repository, and you know, there's always the discussion of when should content be scanned for viruses, when should we be scanning content for you know, any kind of information that we think. So if there's PII that we can't have in our repository, if there's anything like that. So there are various Amazon services that we've started to look at that could, you know, actually be integrated into our process, and whether or not we want to do that at the repository level or work with other you know, libraries across the university to try to implement some of that. There's always that kind of conversation. Where should it happen? How much is this going to cost? What are we actually looking at in terms of like the workflow, and whether this will slow it down, and what happens when we find something, and of course, you know, all the additional actions that have to happen after that. So I think it's kind of made us shy away from implementing some of these or exploring some of these technologies. Of course, it's not a light lift either. Something that we have to dedicate some serious time to. So.
Great, thank you so much, Eric. Another comment we have in the chat from Mary Chris. The data sets are small and diverse, especially for using AI to analyze born digital unstructured archival records. So for example, facial recognition for digital images. The issue of the size of data sets is an important one as well. Thank you so much for this. Rebecca has another comment. In the cultural heritage sector, I also think we have a particular responsibility to provide accurate and trustworthy metadata about our collections. What's the balance between using AI tools to save time and using time to fact and quality check AI tools? A very important topic here. About metadata, I'm leading another project called the ICON project with French researchers, and we've been using AI to add metadata to colonial images, especially when metadata is problematic, for example, using racist language. So of course, the quality of the metadata is absolutely central here, and we do need to keep humans in the loop. So we cannot let machines do the work without any oversight. So thank you so much, Rebecca, for this. Do we have other comments, or do people want to move to the next questions?
I could add one thing. So my name is Michelle Pillillo. I'm at Cornell University and I work in digital preservation. One of the things that I think about a lot is that the traditional path for physical materials for accessioning and for evaluating, accessioning, and arranging those materials is well understood. But for digital materials, it seems that the path for evaluating, accessioning, arranging, even like just shoveling through and deciding what the appropriate arrangement is much less understood. And I wonder also, I sometimes even question myself as to what arrangement would mean in a digital world, especially in a world where you can create a chatbot around a collection of material and perhaps not arrange it at all. Just ask and answer questions based on whatever the tools can divine out of the files themselves. So I think trying to figure that piece out to help our archivist friends, because we are, in digital preservation, we're very archivist adjacent, I think is something that we are positioned at Cornell to really perhaps help with, but definitely eager to help with. And I think in terms of cost, that is something that we've also contemplated a lot at Cornell. But I think cost is something that we can't figure out until we have a workflow that we anticipate. So once we have that workflow, we can price it out and see what it is and decide whether it's worth it.
Absolutely, thank you so much. So perhaps the next priority should be to have workflows available for the sector. Great, thank you. So Mary Chris has added something in the chat. The amount of processing computer power you need to use AI and to store and manage data sets, and of course that can be very costly. Absolutely, that's a good point. Thank you so much, Mary Chris. Any other comments, either in the chat or if you want to jump in, or otherwise we can just move on to the next question. Okay, so let's move on to the next question, and Glen is leading on this one.
I think we arranged these with the expectations that the answers would be different, but possibly they're the same. We had wanted to ask you to focus on your own particular institutions. I mean, many of you have mentioned things that are particular, including cost and the desire for high quality and reliable AI. Are there any other things that any other challenges that you're facing that are particular to your institutions that we haven't brought up? Ah, yes, time. I appreciate that. Let's see, I think this was, oh yes, Rebecca very early mentioned the time thing. So this is, for me, it's a similar question of fighting with the naive administrators who think that AI will save time when in fact it takes time, or thinking that it will save money when in fact it costs lots of extra money. Absolutely, we all need time to explore. Most of us just keep, even in an organization like mine, which is very tech focused, it takes so much energy just to keep the lights on, right? To keep the servers running, to keep the indexing going. That's certainly the case that most of the experimentation happens in my part of the organization with PhD students who are researching cutting edge topics that don't necessarily make it into production. And to get them into production would take even more time from people who are busy just maintaining the status quo. So absolutely more time to explore. The AEOLIAN project for me in particular has been great because the requirements of the funding agency have made me make time to explore things that otherwise I might not have. And I do think that our colleagues, the dozens and dozens of people who contributed to it, found the same thing, that just the requirement that we publish and that we present at workshops and create these research outcomes has allowed us a little bit of that time. Hasn't always made it into production.
Okay, Glenn, I see. Do you have access to the chat on
Yes,
your
I'm looking at
side?
the chat. Those are great comments. Yes, Michelle wanting to identify time to explore and criteria, time to determine the criteria to evaluate the results of AI experiments, especially where the user experience may be considerably new or different compared to traditional methods. Yeah, that is a big challenge. Not just time, but sort of wrapping our collective heads around it, and making sure that our standards and our traditions are properly reflected in AI. And then Marie-Chris, a big push at your institution to use AI, but without the technical infrastructure to manage or store the data at various levels, at all of those levels. You're in an archival institution, Marie-Chris?
I'm actually at a university, and it's just kind of one of those things where it's like just kind of getting ahead of, where people are being able to store things and keep things until they get to us, or even having a place for processing. So it's just kind of one of those things where, and we're also an all electronic records institution as well. So yeah, it's just kind of like, do we have the space for people to actually, store and manage and prepare things?
Where is that mandate coming from in your case? Is it from research community or administration or from workers like you?
In terms of kind of the push to use AI?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's coming from the top,
Mhm.
yeah. And I don't know how actively, it's one of those things, but it's definitely something that, they really want to support and push forward, hopefully, like you said, to increase efficiencies. But we'll
Yeah.
see. Yeah.
I would like to confess that at the beginning of this of our project, I was a little bit worried that there would be an expectation that we would all be cheerleaders for AI. But in fact, I need not have worried, because everyone in our sectors is very, very critical in a positively critical way. They're all interested in exploring, but nobody takes the naive stance that AI is going to solve problems or that it's going to be cheap. I think all of our contributors have realized that that there's a price to the promise. Any other people want to contribute from your own institutions, either frustrations or successes?
This is Marta Anderson again. When I see this question about what will I need to apply AI in my organization, I will say that more specific examples on how AI could be applied to different areas of the organization. And I do work at an academic library.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I think the very first comment was that AI is so broad. It's so broad and so broadly understood that if people say AI has to be everywhere, each particular application is so very particular and so fraught with decision points and consequences, both unintended and possibly intended, but overwhelming, that it really is hard to respond to those pressures.
Agreed.
Okay,
all right.
fantastic.
Yeah, Lise, let's move on.
Can I ask people about collaboration? Do you have any collaborations at the moment with digital humanities scholars, computer scientists, or do you have conversations within your sector, within the GLAM sector? I'm just wondering about this, because I think that was really a plus with the AEOLIAN project, the fact that we had to collaborate, we had to work with people across various disciplines and sectors. So I'm just wondering about this. I mean, I think, Glen, you mentioned that there is this other project, AI for Labs, right? Which is mostly based in the US. Is it still going on?
Yes, it's it is indeed still going on. It's a fairly loose affiliation. Yeah, I think it's called AI for LAM. There's a modest web presence. It's the group of people that's behind a conference called Fantastic Futures. I just saw the announcement for a third meeting. The first one was at BNF in Paris, I believe. The second one was at Stanford.
Yes. Yeah, I missed the first one. Yeah, it was definitely in Paris at the BNF French National Library. Yeah,
right. The second one I attended was at Stanford, and the third one is in Europe. I don't quite remember where it is, but once I stop talking, I can look it up for you. So this is Nicole Coleman, who's one of the principals of that effort, wrote the Stanford case study. So she was active in the AEOLIAN network, and I agree with Lise that the fact that the network was designed as a network and that it was specifically designed to promote collaboration and that it connected these two somewhat disparate communities, AI for LAM and an international, or at least transatlantic network of people interested in AI and cultural heritage. That's been a great outcome.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Glenn. If you find the link to their website, you might want to put it in the chat. That would be great. And I see that Martha has added the link to the Inter-Pares Trust AI project as well, which I believe is based at UBC, University of British Columbia in Vancouver. I did my PhD there. That's why I know about the project. So that's a great project. Thank you so much, Martha, for this. I think we need more collaboration, really, more projects like this. Moving on, okay, fantastic. Did you have other comments, everyone, or shall we move on to the next slide? No? Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so I just wanted to say a few words about related projects that I've been leading. So I mentioned briefly the ICON project. So this one is with French researchers, and it's on visual AI and early conflict photography. So we've been working on colonial photographs. So for example, very violent pictures. We have a lot of project partners as part of this project. So we've been working with the Imperial War Museums in London. We've been working with the Quai Branly Museum in Paris as well. And really the big issue they have is about, trying to make those images more accessible, because many of them are in storage and are not used by anyone. But of course, when we try to make those archives more accessible, we need to do this in a responsible way. The other project I wanted to mention is the Lustre project. So this one is delivered with the Cabinet Office in the UK, and we are trying to make government records more accessible. So as you probably know, government people in the UK, they need to send their archives to the National Archives every 20 years. So after 20 years, they need to send documents that have historical value. And of course, the big issue is trying to find records that have historical values. So that's why I think this kind of collaborations between digital humanities researchers and government professionals can be very useful, trying to identify records that have historical value. And also we're working very closely with archivists, of course. TNS, the National Archives in the UK, is a project partner on this project. We are preparing a special issue at the moment. It's going to be published in AI and Society, and the title of the special issue is When Data Turns into Archives, Making Digital Records More Accessible with AI. So I'm going to put the link to the website in the chat if you're interested. I think this link should work, hopefully. Otherwise, just go to the lustre-network.net address and click on Outputs, and you should find the link to the special issue towards the bottom of the page. So anyway, so the special issue is going to be published later this year. We are still accepting abstracts if you want to send us an abstract. So just short abstracts, that will be due at the end of June. Okay, so we still have a bit of time for this. And then full papers would be due in September. So again, we are expecting quite a lot of contributions from people in the government sector, people who work with records management, but also we are expecting contributions from people in the GLAM sector. So it's not only about government archives, it's also about records in the GLAM sector, really. So feel free to send us an abstract. I hope to hear from many of you. Glenn, did you want to add anything at this point?
No, I don't think so. I think I've said all I need to say.
Okay, fantastic. Do we have other questions at this point? And thank you, Glen, by the way, for putting the link to the ICON
sure,
project. That's great. Thanks a lot. Okay, any final question? Otherwise, I will just hand over to Eric and Robin.
I think there's one, this is a really general question, but it also kind of like pertains to time and energy and cost and everything. But like do you have any recommendations in terms of advocating for the use of AI at any, when it comes to starting up a project like this, considering the investment and everything, what methods have you found yourselves using to actually advocate for the time, for the energy, for the investigation into use of AI in different areas? Again, it's a general question, but yeah.
Glen, would you like to answer this one?
I think in my case, yes, I'll answer it, but the answer will point right back to you, Lise. In my case, the only thing that really speaks is grant money. And Lise has just been a real champion in getting grants in this space. I feel very fortunate to have been able to partner with her on this one project, but the fact that Lise has done many of them is, it's really notable. And I do think that's a big motivating factor. That's not necessarily a happy factor. I know that when I worked in a library before I worked in an academic department, getting grants was a very fraught matter. We were discouraged from seeking grants, but so I don't know what to say without that.
No, absolutely. I think that's an important point, because obviously you need grants to do this kind of work. In the case of Aeolian, as I said at the beginning, we got some money from the HRC in the UK and the NEH in the US. And this kind of collaboration is a bit unusual. They did it for, I think, 2 years, and then they stopped the program. And I think we need this kind of transatlantic, transnational, programs offered by agencies, because otherwise it's very difficult to do this kind of transnational work. In the case of Loughborough, it's a very UK-based project, because the kind of funding I have is the HRC, and for this particular scheme, it's mostly a UK scheme. So more collaborations, perhaps encouraging funding agencies to push for this kind of work would be great. Okay, I see a comment in the chat from Hillary. Curious if anyone is having conversation at their institutions about transparency when using AI to processing material, creating metadata used in reading. Do you have boilerplate language notifying people that AI has been used? So perhaps it's a question for the group here about using AI and transparency. Do you have any guidelines, Glen, at the University of Illinois about this?
I don't think we do, but we definitely should. We certainly should. Boilerplate language is a difficult thing. If you follow the current criticism of large language models and ChatGPT, a recent discovery has been that the boilerplate language that ChatGPT produces is making it into published supposedly peer-reviewed scientific papers. And that's a way to identify that papers have been written by GPT, an unintentional gaffe. I mean, just the use of the word certainly. If you've played with ChatGPT and you ask it to do something, it always starts out with certainly. I'd be happy to do that. And some of this boilerplate language is making it into the scientific literature, pseudoscientific, I would say, because it's produced by AI. We don't, in the HathiTrust Research Center, I think we go out of our way to warn people that we use uncorrected OCR. We don't say that OCR is a form of AI or anything like that. We just say that the data is not clean. It's not perfect. We also, when we teach, we talk to people about natural language processing and how that set of algorithms is imperfect. But we don't present our things, our products with disclaimers, but I think we should. And especially in the case of creating metadata, artificially created metadata, I think it's absolutely essential to do that.
Yeah, I'm just curious because thinking like from a digital preservation standpoint within an archive, like we're always trying to make sure like we use these tools to process this material, right? Like this is things that I'll put in a processing note in archive space. But then I'm curious, yeah, that always ends up in the back end. And what do we do on kind of those public facing portals?
Okay, so Mary Chris has added something in the chat. When we use facial recognition at my last place of employment, we had a special field for the people identified via a facial recognition software. We titled it something like facial recognition recognize people. Okay, interesting point about computer vision applied to those images. And Rebecca has something in the chat as well. We have boilerplate language about AI-generated transcripts, which is the only thing that we currently have public so far.
This sounds like a grant opportunity to me, like to develop best practices, a set of best practices. And I'm not sure that I know a great effort that in the past on a different topic, but developing a set of best practices for copyright and fair use in the US in different sectors. I can easily imagine an effort to do the same for the use of AI in our sectors. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. We're getting close to the top of the hour here. So I'll have to ask any last questions here for Lise and Glen? I think it's been a great conversation.
Well, thank you so much, Eric and Robin, for inviting us. Thank you to all of you for joining us today. That's been a pleasure to have this conversation and to present the AEOLIAN project. So thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you both for coming.
Yeah,
Pleasure.
thanks so much. Appreciate it. Okay. All right. Well, I guess we're ready to wrap up. And again, I'll just mention our next meeting is in June, on June 17th. So we hope to see you all then. And then we also, just a quick reminder that this has been recorded, so we will post the discussion up on our YouTube channel. So we'll send out a note when that's done too. But yeah, I think that, Robin, any other things you want to mention?
No. Thanks, everybody.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you again, Lise. Thanks, Glen. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.